So, Taj, thank you so much for joining me today for our Labors of Love series as we celebrate Black History Month and this year's theme of African Americans in labor. We wanted to give the theme a bit of a WNBA twist in asking women, specifically Black women, who have played in this league and are connected to the Connecticut Sun in some way, to talk about their experiences helping to build the WNBA into what it is today. I thought this project would be really timely considering the amount of attention and brand awareness that the W has gained over the course of the last few seasons, to really paint a picture of what has gone into creating the league as we see it today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts. And without further ado, I would love to get started with talking about some of your incredible accolades that you have garnered over your time with the Connecticut Sun specifically. So I'm going to rattle some things off, and afterward, I want to hear what your thoughts are in hearing all of your incredible accomplishments. Okay, so first we have with the Sun, two-time WNBA All-Star, All WNBA Second Team, WNBA All Defensive Second Team, the WNBA Kim Perot Sportsmanship Award, WNBA Eastern Conference Champion, and in franchise history, currently you are second in blocks and rebounds, fourth in scoring and steals, fifth in games played, and ninth in assists. So, like, when I list all of that with your time with the Sun, what comes to mind for you?
Wow. I feel like I didn't play that long, but I mean, it's amazing. It's just, you never really think about, like, I wouldn't know those offhand. And when people repeat them to me, I'm almost incredulous. Like, are you sure those are mine? Because it doesn't seem like it. And I mean, 4 years um, really went by quickly. And you always feel like you leave stuff undone. So, I mean, I'm thankful I had that kind of impact with the Sun, and I'm very much in awe of those numbers.
As you should be. So I want to take it back a little bit. As a kid growing up, did you dream that you would play professionally?
So yeah, no, never at in my wildest dreams. I'm a kid of the '70s, so there weren't any professional leagues that I knew about. Ever thought it would ever be one either. My dad is a big fan of the Philadelphia 76ers and Dr. J and Moses Malone and Mo Cheeks and Bobby Johnson and all of them. So I grew up watching old school basketball, barely watching it because I'm from the South. So not really a girl thing to do. But I never played growing up. Never. Couldn't do that in the South, not from Augusta, Georgia. And so I ended up watching a lot on the side with my brother while my dad played pickup outside with his Chuck Taylors on, with all of his friends, and laughing and joking and then arguing and then taking us home and not wanting to play again and then coming back the next week when he had time. And so for me, it was all about, for my dad, it was all about academics and making great grades to be able to have a great job. Like that was the end all be all for him, especially for a woman. It was more about me being able to cook, clean, take care of the house, and then maybe if I had a career, it'd be great. But honestly, the mainstays of a girl who was born in the '70s. So
I mean, pretty incredible that you've come so far in what was dreamed for you. And my question is, what time or what point did you start playing basketball? Like, how did we get here?
I started at 15 and a half ish. I was randomly walking down the hall of my high school. I got straight A's. And this woman who at the time would become my history teacher once I moved to 11th grade, but in the 10th, she was not my teacher. Just ran down the hall and chased me down and was like, "Hey, you want to play basketball?" I was like, "No." And left. Kept seeing her. Finally sat down. She's like, "Come here. I want you to go. Come here to my room after class is done." I was like, "I got to catch the bus. I got to get home. I got to start dinner." My dad works two jobs at the time, three jobs probably, where I have to go home and cook for my brother and him, and clean and everything, and get all my work done. And it was not something my dad was gonna okay. So I told her, and she was like, "It's okay. I'm gonna bring you home." she talks to me about this sport I'd never heard of. Just because my dad played, I knew it was what basketball was in a sense, but I wasn't really interested. And it had been years since I'd been with my dad watching him play. So she she came to my house and asked my dad. He said no. Like the first 30 times he said no. Thankfully, my coach, Coach Lynn Brantley, who is gone now, but never forgotten, was very persistent, and kept coming by my house, even though my dad is a 6'4", hulking 280 bald head, Isaac Hayes looking guy coming to the door, and my coach maybe was 5'9" on a good day. This very non-African American woman showing up at my dad's door. So it was a little scary, a little touch and go. My dad raised his voice a couple times, but I'm thankful that she saw something in me that he didn't see at the time, that I didn't see. And she was very persistent. And when he laid down the rules, finally, he let me go. I had no clue how to play the sport. She basically had to teach me everything. He just told me to stand under the basket and aim at that square. And that's what I did for 3 years. I didn't learn the game and to defend and block shots because I was an athlete. So she put me in track and field. She put me in softball. She made me do cross country, which I ended up loving. Like she put me in everything. And I was at the time what you call a natural athlete, but I was so raw, having not been able to play before. And all I used to do is sprint with at outside with no shoes on with all the neighborhood kids. We just run around and sprint and race each other like most kids did who did not have toys and things like that. So, yeah, through her guidance, I mean, there was no internet. So I was receiving, mailed in buckets of offers because I was averaging by my junior year like 25 points, 16 rebounds, and it so happens that my teammate was the sister of an NBA player. So they called us the Twin Towers, Mabel Sanders. She was she was maybe a little taller than me, but a lot bigger than me, and we were just unstoppable. Unfortunately, we did not win state, which was the saddest part of my high school career. It got me into college free of charge because I would have never been able to go any other way because my dad couldn't afford it.
And at what point did the dream of like playing professionally actually become a reality in your head?
Uh, my last year of college at St. Edward's NAIA school, um, I was player of the year. I went to the final four. I had been All American all the years that I played there. Random guy calls our house and was like, "Hey, I'm an agent for overseas booking. I could get you overseas," which was to me professional because there was no WNBA at the time or ABL. And ended up, he talked to me and he was like, "Oh yeah, you'd make $600 a month, but you probably wouldn't make more than that because you're an IA player." And that was, I don't know, it was like February, Marchish, and it was like heartbreaking. Like I have a degree. I can make more than that working at a regular job. Like I wouldn't go
Mhm.
overseas to do that. And I never really felt an urge, a passion about basketball. I just thought of it as a means to an end. So I played 3 years in high school, only 3 years in college because I had a baby my first year of college. So I only played 3 years in college. So you're talking about a kid who played 6 years off and on, not really all the way, who's really, I was just thinking about my future of how I'm gonna take care of my daughter. Like I need to get a regular job, take care of my daughter. This basketball thing was great. It paid for school. I'm over it now. Let's go. And that's literally where it was. I never even thought that there would be anything more than that, what he told me. And I ended up meeting Clarissa Davis Reitzel, who was the University of Texas star, just like a dominant star at that time when University of Texas was undefeated. She was one of the players that helped them win the national championship, first undefeated women's team ever. She had moved. She was playing in Europe overseas. She and her husband were agents, becoming agents at that time for overseas. And because I was living in Austin, my school was in Austin, I used to play pickup a lot outside with all of the other players during the summer. And that's how I met, knew she knew about me because of that. And so she ended up calling me and saying, was like, you can make way more money than that overseas. After I told her what the gentleman had told me, she was like, I'm starting an agency. I'd love for you to be part of my agency. And I was basically, I think, the second person with her agency. She no longer has it now, but so she sent me overseas. She got me started to thinking that maybe there's something to this overseas. I've always wanted to travel. Why not do it for free and play basketball a little bit longer? So, and bring my daughter along. It was like win-win, win. Um, and I never wanted to look back and say I could have, should have, would have done this when it's an opportunity of a lifetime, because I couldn't afford to travel with my daughter myself and see all those places I'd read about in books.
That's incredible. And honestly, the fact that you were doing all of that as a mother is just like so powerful to me. What an incredible example to carry for your daughter and her to see like you can do whatever you put your mind to, despite what people have to say, despite where they think your trajectory is. So first of all, kudos to you for that. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
Um, where along that journey of playing overseas, at what point did the WNBA come into fruition? And what was your thought process around joining the league first, and then like what did that look like for you in those beginning years?
Well, to be really historic, the ABL came first. So after
Of
the
course, yes.
96 Olympics, the ABL started that August of 96, as opposed to the W didn't start till 97 of May.
Right.
So I immediately, Clarissa had me go to the combine for the ABL because I wasn't as known. I went to an NAIA school. I'm from a small town in Georgia. So it's not like I went to a Power Five or anything like that where people would have known my name. I mean, I got cut from the USA team at the time when they used to do the mass, bring in mass players and figure them out instead of just naming people, back when you really had to work hard to try to get into to be a Olympian or a world champion. I think I was like next to last cut for the world. It was called a different thing, but I think now we call it the World Cup.
Mhm.
Um, so she wanted me to go to the combine and just be myself. And after playing a few years overseas, I had started learning. Like my first year in Europe, I had an American coach who really was teaching me the game and teaching me how to use my strength, my speed. So, I mean, at the combine, I had on a red headband and just flew around everywhere because I was quicker than everyone because I ran track a lot. And that's like my base was anyway. So I was out jumping people. I could dunk. Because I did the high jump in high school. It was crazy. So I got drafted in the ABL uh, to the Richmond Rage at the time, who was coached by Dawn Staley's associate head coach, Lisa Boyer. She was my head coach in the ABL my first year.
Wow.
Um, Me and Dawn were on the same team. We played for the Richmond Rage. So it was me, Dawn Staley, Adrian Goodson, Marta Sobral, who's an Olympian, Adrian Goodson, who's a New Jerseyan and a legend here. Kristen Cummings, who was a legend from Long Beach State. We played with quite a few players that were just crazy good. I'd never heard of. They'd never heard of me. And we made it to the finals our first year and end up losing in 5 games to the Columbus Quest, who had Katie Smith on it, future everything, leading scorer of the WNBA for a while till Diana took over. Um, all everything basically, and Shannon Johnson, who was also became an Olympian. So we fought 5 games, lost that series, and then the next year, the ownership decided to move to Philly to try to pull some of the Dawn Staley folks that knew her. Ended up going to Philly, played with Teresa Edwards, my all-time fave, also legend of the game, Hall of Famer. Michelle Marciniak, we ended up switching the team. We got a lot of new players in, and we became the Philly Rage. So after that year, we made it to the finals again and lost, or semifinals and lost. And that next year, Dawn left for the W. And so it was me, Teresa T, Michelle Spinderella, as they call her, University of Tennessee Spinderella. Um, and halfway through, the ABL folded. And so that was 98, the middle, like right before Christmas of 1998, the ABL folded. And we had no idea because no one had told us anything. So
Really?
yeah, I didn't know. And my coach changed when we went to Philly. Ann Donovan became our head coach. They did not keep Lisa Boyer when we moved. And so Ann Donovan coached us for those next 2 years. Um, yeah, but it was crazy. Like one minute you heading to practice, you bought all these Christmas presents, you're like living it up, and then the next minute you're like, what? Someone's telling you at the office, calling you in and telling you that the league folded and come get your stuff. Because that's what
Crazy. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. A lot of players had to take presents back. Like
Oh my
we're
God.
talking about you're living in an apartment because it was during the normal season. So we were paying our apartment. We were paying for everything. So literally you're like, let me talk to my landlord because I can't afford the rent. Or, we didn't know at the time. Now I do. But, when you go into bankruptcy, all of your assets are held. So we're thinking, oh, at least they're going to pay us our last check. And nope, it didn't happen. Everything was frozen. And this was like the beginning of December. So they freeze everything and everyone disperses to their homes. The league ceases operations, goes into bankruptcy. And we are also, players are considered assets. Because unlike the WNBA, the ABL held all of the players' rights. They controlled the teams. There was no individual owners
Okay.
paying. So the ABL as a whole was providing each team and paying for all of the salaries coming out of one place. And quiet as it's kept, Joe Lacob was part of the ownership for the ABL. So he was always very interested and gung ho about women's basketball. Now I know he got the Valkyries, but before that, that's how I know him. I met him and
Right.
his son through the ABL.
Okay, so I love, first of all, that you always are listing the names of women who you've played with. I think that's so special, like those bonds and the camaraderie and the fact that you're like this walking historian of women's basketball just in your own experiences. Like I just love that. And hearing even names that I've never heard before and now I want to go look them up. I mean, I just think that that is so special. So please don't ever stop doing that because
They're the
people need to know these
legends.
names.
Like the legends of the game
Yeah,
rarely get recognized because people have a short memory,
of
and the
course.
legends that came, the people that remember them are, I mean, everyone's getting older, so you have oral history, especially in our culture as African Americans. Our history is passed down through oral history, and I want to be the keeper and make sure that everyone knows about these players that maybe you never saw play before. It's rare that anyone would never have seen Teresa Edwards or Ruthie Bolton, Holyfield at the time, Ruthie Bolton, or the late great Nikki McCrae. But as you continue to speak their names to other people, like you said, you go look it up, you figure it out, you watch them on YouTube, and they then become part of the present instead of the legends of the past. And I think sometimes we forget that as basketball keepers, basketball players, that we're the keepers of these stories, that we're the keepers of the legends, and that's how they remain. So, and for the next generation, I want my son to know who Teresa Edwards is. I want my son to know who Margot Diedick was. I want my son to know who Kirsten Cummings was, because not only did they play integral part in my life, Ann Donovan, um, Lusa Harris, all of these greats also, I want them to play a significant part in what he is sharing as well, his oral history, and my daughters, their oral history as they move on into adulthood and share those stories, even if they've never played.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for that. So what year did you join the WNBA? Was that 1996?
1999.
99. Okay. And I
So
know that you
everything
started.
got, yeah, everything got untangled with the ABL because they held our rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was crazy because at the same time that that was all getting worked out with the judge, the WNBA was doing its first CBA.
Right.
And part of that CBA was to limit the amount of ABL players that could come into the WNBA. So it started off really adversarially. Um, the notion was that, and people had said this, that the ABL had better talent than the WNBA at the time. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was what was being said by newscasters, everyone. Like, this can only be great for women's basketball because now you're bringing all of the best talent in. You have the talent that's in the W. Now people are fighting for spots. What happens is women's basketball gets elevated, which I kind of agreed with. And so for us, it was like, oh, they don't really want us in the league because, we were with the ABL. That was kind of the feeling going in. And then the other feeling was, we've got to prove to them that we're that good, that we're best. We're going to play hard. We're going to represent that. You're not bringing in like the ABL, let's bring in all the scrubs, even though that wasn't ever said, but that's kind of the feeling a lot of us had. And so as I came into Orlando, which was um, a new team. There were two new teams. Portland was coming in, Orlando, Miami Soul, and I'm missing someone else. But we all came in as new teams. And so, it was great because in Orlando, everybody was new. So I think it wasn't as bad as it would have been if I'd come into a team that was already set. So because we were all new, we were all fighting for our lives. It was better. It was easier. I came in with three other WNBA players, ABL players, and then because of the expansion draft, we got three other players that were from the expansion draft. I don't know how it worked back then, what the first expansion draft was, but and then we had regional picks in the W back then. So our regional pick became Nikisha Sales, who had been injured the year before in her ACL or her Achilles, and she scored the bucket, but she was drafted to the Orlando team and sat out because of that year before. So she was coming in at the same time. We were all coming in. So it was like a hodgepodge of all of us. And I
A
mean,
ragtag group of
yeah, it was Tari Phillips, myself, Nikisha. Like it was crazy. Brooke Wyckoff. Like we were all there together, and it was just like, oh, we're all new. You don't have a clue. Katie Douglas, who had just won the title in Purdue with our head coach, who was Carolyn Peck, who had also the first African American to win a title, NCAA title for women's basketball. So we were all coming in, and it was all new and amazing. And for me, I was still basically learning the game and learning to love the game. I think being overseas, seeing the development and seeing the fire that it generated in me to want to be the best. And after getting cut from USA Basketball and literally being told I needed more experience because I was only an NIA player, and then remembering the guy telling me, "Oh, you're just an NIA player, so this is what you get," and then kind of coming into the ABL and being an all-star, and I led the league in blocks in the ABL, like knowing that I had this huge upside that Coach Boyer also poured into me. He's like, you have a huge upside. And Coach Donovan poured into me. So then I started realizing that I really cared about the game. I really cared about my development. And it started pushing me and motivating me to do more, to want more of myself. And that, I think, is how the passion for the game and the love of the game grew from that. When you, I mean, it's for everything in the world. When you do well and you see yourself getting better, you add more in. Everyone will do that. Like, yeah, I know computers, but as I get better at computers, I want more, I want more, I want more. So it's that kind of feeling that you kind of have where you're just like, I want more. How can I get more of this great feeling? I'm getting better. And that's what motivated me just to push myself. And that's where the love and the passion came from for the actual game itself.
Can you kind of just talk to the the representation that you've had and having Black women who understand what you're going through on a daily basis in life, being able to pour into you on the court?
I'll say Coach Pack was by far the closest in age as well to me. Um, we weren't that far apart. I think she won her title at 30. She was 39.
Mhm.
Um, and, or maybe even younger than that. But I got to Orlando. I'm 29, about to turn 30. I'm a mother, at the time, mother of two, um, and about to get married at the end of the year. And there were so many, there would be so many different things pulling me. But what stood out to me is that Coach Peck was always composed, ready to roll, prepared. And for me, I didn't grow up with a mother figure per se. My coach was my mom, but she wasn't a black woman. She kind of just took care of me to make sure I was good. But Coach Peck, Coach Donovan, who is a non white woman, they kind of taught me how to be a better version of myself, but also to accept myself as I am. Growing up in a male dominated household, it was tough for me because my dad didn't know any better. I mean, I cut my hair really short. I didn't wear dresses. I'm in pants that are floods because we didn't have a lot of money, and I was growing rapidly every year in high school. My brother wasn't growing yet, and so it was like, okay, I'm gonna buy one outfit for both of y'all. It's the same, the same pants, same shirt. We wore everything, sneakers. My feet were growing. By the time I was 11, I was in 11, 12, 12, 13, 13.
Me
So
too, girl. Me too.
you're talking about, now we're 14 and men. So you're talking about, I see Coach Peck and she's polished. Her hair is gorgeous. She's always put together. She's coaching from a space of understanding and knowledge. You could come in and just sit and talk to her. And our assistant was Coach Charlene Thomas Swinson, who's the assistant with the Aces. So I had two very fabulous black women leading me with the Orlando Miracle. And Charlene Thomas Swinson was a wife. She had kids. So it was like, how are you doing all this and still looking great? Like, what? I barely can get out of bed. My daughter is, there. Some days she's sick. I still got to come to practice. Female things happen. You feel unwell. Like it. So just being able to step into a space and be able to say that I needed help, which I'd never been able to do because, my dad was tough. Like, you get through it. You don't show weakness. He's a guy. That's his big thing. Like, we just get through. No matter what it is, we get through. And I still held on to some of that. But, being able to come into her office and just sometimes cry. Like, I was stressed out. I was just a single parent. I had a nanny that lived with me, but I'm single trying to manage a household here, a household in Europe. It was a lot sometimes. And just having strong black women that when you stepped on the court, they cared about me. Yes, we're going to do well playing. Wow. How are you doing, Taj? How are you really doing? And just being able to step into their offices and share some of my fears and some of my goals, and having someone who'd been through that be able to then add value and not detract. Like, no matter how much I got yelled at on a court, I always separate that. Not a lot of players can. I don't, that's not me. That's the basketball player, Taj, not the person. That's the coach, not the person. And so when I step in, I never bring that stuff like, oh, you yelled at me because I missed a free throw. No, I want to know, how can I be better at this life thing? Like, it's something as small as how do you balance your checkbook? Because my dad never taught me that. Most black folks from the ghetto with no money weren't taught about balancing a checkbook or a credit card or things like that. Like, I need to buy a car. Like, how do I go about that? Do I just go and be like, hey, I want that car no matter what price? Like, those are things that you don't really think about, that you have someone that's been in the same situation or near a situation that looks like you, um, that talks like you, that you can go to and just be like, oh, and you take off the facades. I think that is the strength. And I'm not saying you cannot have that with someone who does not look like you and talk like you, but I think there's a strength and a power when you go to someone who's experienced something very similar to your lived experience and you can share. details. Now, I may make the same mistakes that you made, but it's still good to have a voice that has been through that, that you can talk to. And that's, I mean, that's what Coach Pack and Coach Charlene CT were about, like being able to share that with us in a way that still um, gave us our dignity and our humanity, and still poured into us on and off the court.
That's beautiful. I want to bring us to your time in Connecticut a little
Hmm.
bit. The franchise moved from Orlando to Connecticut in 2003, and I just want to talk about, so what was that experience like for you? Like the reception from the Connecticut community, the excitement around the team. What was all that like for you?
Shocking, actually, because in Orlando, it was like Orlando is a vacation town, and the men, there was Anthony Hardaway, Shaq was there, like Dennis Scott was there, all of those great players were there. So people were coming to see the men play, even if they weren't winning all the time at that time. And then when it come to our games, you can count all the people in the stands giving away tickets. Hey, come to the game. To coming to Connecticut, where people, I think they had sold this amount of season tickets that they were supposed to get a franchise way before. Like I remember our open practice coming in and it was packed. And I was like, oh my God. And I played with Rebecca Lobo the first year, and she was like, "Oh, this is nothing." It wasn't even all the way packed, like top rafters in Mohegan Sun, but it was pretty packed. It was all the lower bowl was filled, and they were clapping and cheering for us, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like seriously. I mean, I played against teams when we were in Orlando that had great fans. DC was selling out every game. Wasn't like it wasn't. LA, you're going, you're seeing fans. New York, they was sold out, and plus all the celebrities in the front. But this was for a team that I was on for me, and I was just amazed and shocked. I was like, this is just they know this is just practice, right? This is just open practice. Like, and then getting to know the fans in a very personal way was I think for me, it's part of the mystique of Connecticut. Not only do they know the players, they know the stats, they know the game, they expect, there's an expectation that people that play there are going to play hard, blue collar, work really hard. And at the end of the day, getting to know some of them on a personal level was the highlight of my time there. I mean, out of all the places I've played, Connecticut and Minnesota has stuck with me, and they're both towns that appreciate women's basketball at a level that is unrivaled, unmatched. Like
Match.
you cannot, you don't think of yes, Springfield started basketball. Indiana Hoosiers, that's more gravitated towards the men and the boys playing. When you think about women's basketball, there's only certain places you really think. And because of UConn, there is a groundswell of fans that just love women's basketball. And every time there was a game, they were there and engaged. And I felt for me, it was my duty to make sure that I was as open with them as I felt that they were. You're spending your hard-earned money. Some of them were driving 2 and 3 hours to come see us play, waiting around in a casino filled with smoke at that time to see us after the games. Like, I don't know if I would have waited for myself to come out after those times, but
In a haze of cigarette smoke.
just being so giving and so open with their love of the team, no matter who played.
Mhm.
Yes, there's an undercurrent because of UConn, but they still. I wasn't from UConn. I didn't even play in the D1. Half of them didn't even know who I was before I played for Connecticut, and they still accepted me and loved on me. I mean, I had mom and dad, my people sat up there for all the years that I played, always blew me kisses, always made sure I was good. Go up there, I give them my hugs after the game, and I leave out. And there were several like that. I mean, I remember eating at a restaurant in Connecticut, old times, best restaurant ever. And she still works there. There's a lady who used to work for the Sun and concessions, work there. And I've known her now. since 2003. She
Yeah.
still works at Old Times. I saw her the last time I went to Connecticut, and I went and ate there because I love that place. I should own it by now. She was still there, and we hugged and talked and chatted.
That's
I hadn't
amazing.
seen her in years. Like, that's Connecticut. You're never
Yeah.
a stranger, and
Yeah.
it'll never change. I walk in and I work for the league, and I get people are still like, "Mama Taj, hey," clapping and cheering for me, and I work for the WNBA, and I feel the same about them.
Yeah.
There's nothing I wouldn't do for the fans that are there because they've been so giving to me. Pictures, autographs, whatever it is, I'm doing it because that's the vibe. Like from day one, 2003, open practice to today, they've just been down. They're down with you, like full flat tires. The fans are going to be there, winning or losing. And a lot of fans aren't like that. Some fans, you lose, they're like, I'm not buying another ticket to see you. But they've been there through all of the ups and downs, not winning a title yet. And through everything, they still are there. They're still coming. I still see many of them that I saw in 2003, the legends, this Connecticut Sun ticket legends. I still see them when I come there, and that it makes me feel great because I feel like true fans are there no matter what, and
Absolutely.
they continue putting their hard-earned money into a team that they love and the players that they love. Yes, would love for them to win a championship just because of that amount of love that they give. Being able to share that with them will be awesome. And when that happens, I will be there cheering with them whether I work for the W or not because I think they deserve it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have some of the best fans. They're so loyal and they truly care about everybody. I mean, I have people coming up to me like I'm like, who am I? Like I'm just, I'm a
You
background character. Like please don't you don't need we don't need to but they love us so much. Like they love the
yes.
people who pour into this team and it's such a hallmark of being in Connecticut and I think it's so special. Taking you back a little bit, you were in the league in a critical period when the
Mhm.
identity of the WNBA was being formed. Um, on the court, the league is known for its physicality, its emotion, and its pace. But for the context of this piece, I want to ask you about the W's off court identity of social consciousness and
Mhm.
activism. Do you think the creation of this identity was something that all of the players talked about and planned, or do you feel as though it was more of a natural progression based on the life experiences and personalities of the women who made up the league?
I definitely think it's the second. I think the
Mm,
identity of player activists, social activists came about as a natural progression of players who not only love the league, but are very, very much part of the communities they inhabit. And when you're part of a community that you either live in, work in, you play in this space, you take on those social ills that you see and you want to do something about it. Um, and some of us are voiceless. And then there's some of us who have very powerful voices that can speak out on behalf of everyone. And I think the natural progression became we cannot sit back and watch this any longer. Like you have to be part of the solution or you're part of the problem or you're okaying the problem. And you see that throughout history that there's been a group that rises up and says, we're not going to allow this anymore. This is wrong. We need to fix this. Even the small steps that we're going to take, at least we're moving towards something more than just sitting in it and being angry about it. Because really, almost all social activism comes from a place of anger about a situation that you feel powerless in. You think about the Olympics when with the raised fist. That's from the anger and the powerlessness we felt as African Americans in a country that didn't agree, even want us to be part of it. And then you have us go to this other country who thinks that we're nothing. How do you like reconcile that with who you are? That powerlessness brought forth power and that stance of this is all about power. This is a black power look. And the same for us as you sit and you're in these communities and you see these things happening and you feel that powerlessness, what can you do? That social activism, that part of player activism then rises up and you're like, I can't sit another day and watch this. And I think that gradualness of what is happening here. There's only I remember the Minnesota. There was only one player from Minnesota when the stuff happened with Gray and the in the back of the van and being killed. Like the rest weren't. But you inhabit that community when you play. You become part of that community as you play there. And the social ills that you are watching, whether it's on TV, on the internet, as you see it in the newspaper, there's a rage. And I'm not saying a rage that makes you want to hurt somebody, but there is a type of powerless rage that overcomes you where you're like, what can I do? What can I do? And I think from our players that came about in a very organic way, but in a very strong way. And they're leading the way in all things activism because not only is it the activism about black and brown bodies and how they're being lost, senseless violence, but how we can make it better for our women, black and brown women, with the women's health initiatives, with those imperatives on the lack of understanding about black and brown women and their bodies and the strength and having someone be an advocate for them in the healthcare field, to our reproductive health. I think all of those are social activisms that our players are engaged in a huge way. And I don't think any one person or two players or three said, let's start this. I think it has grown and it has become what you see now. And at the beginning, there were just some stuff like, okay, you're going to fine us for wearing these shirts, but we're going to wear these shirts. And we're going to speak out on what's wrong. Every time you put a mic to our mouths, we're going to say her name. Every time you ask us a question about basketball, we're going to tell you this stat about how many black and brown people are being killed by law enforcement every year. That is a purposeful activism that grew from this powerlessness that a lot of the players felt. Um, that I felt even when I was playing. Where I grew up in a racist Augusta, Georgia. I remember the feelings my dad had. I remember the anger in his voice when he had to say sir and no sir, and the names that were called to us at the time. I may not have understood them, but I understood the anger in my dad's jaw, how it was set when they were saying these things. And then as I got older, recognizing that this is not coming from a place of love. This is coming from a place of hate or maybe misunderstanding. But then seeing this stuff happen over and over again, you get desensitized, but you don't forget that anger and that pain. And our players have seen it so much that it just burst through their chests as this one voice. Like, how can we, the WNBA, speak on behalf of those who have no voice? And I think that's where that social activism came from. And I think it's very organic, but I also think it's part of the DNA of the people who also live in this league and inhabit those communities and inhabit those spaces. Um, that was the next logical step.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. I think it's incredible that they would use their platform for this type of work, especially for a long time the WNBA was not on its 2 feet the way that it is today, and so
Yeah,
having the courage and the sacrifice to make that way and to establish this league in this way, despite all of that, I think is just so powerful. It's
it
truly
is.
incredible. And I feel like you honestly have a closer seat at the table than most. I mean, you've been in the front office, on the front
Mhm,
office side for some years now, and you're currently a player relations and development manager for the WNBA.
mhm.
Can you explain a little bit about what that entails and what drove you to that job?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second first. Um, the W was in a state of change. Lisa Borders had left for the Me Too. She's supposed to be the CEO of Me Too. So we had no president, we had no commissioner. Mark Tatum was the interim commissioner, interim president. And I was in the NBA and player development and was asked about moving to the W because there had not been this job ever before in the W, and they wanted it to be a former player. And that's how I got to this job. And so my job is literally a lot of different parts, but my main player relations and player development is I'm here as a former player speaking to our current and former players to help them. Basically, I build bridges, and I build bridges between current players and former players in the league, current players in the league, former and current with their teams, management, whatever that relationship entails, I do. Whether it's a 2 a.m. call, it's a call at 3 a.m. when the stuff happened in Russia. So I basically am a bridge and a connector for all of these different aspects of a player. And then my player development part is that 360 holistic view of that player. I talk to them before they come in the league, going to the March Madness, the Final Four, seeing them at games. I go to college games where I'm talking to them and engaging all the way through draft if they get drafted or if they're free agents to their teams. I go to the teams with another colleague and I meet with them in their spaces, whether it's via Zoom or actually in person, bringing subject matter experts that are important for them and their careers and their futures. And then at towards the end, I then transition and help them with support, whether it's resume building, they want to start a foundation, they want to start a business, they don't want to do anything. They want to come to some events and CW All Star in 2 years occasionally, or they want to go overseas for State Department trips, or they want, whatever it is. So my development is basically helping the player be the best person they can be outside of their game. So I don't work with anyone on court anymore. Did that when I was coaching. Not that type of player development, because in the NBA, player development means on court work. And some in the W too now, we have some player development coaches. I am an off court. So everything that involves that player that does not have to do with and some of it does have to do with the game, like the mental health part of it, the mind health part. I work with our mind health expert, Dr. Gunter, and help her with the teams and the things that have to do with mind health as well. So yeah, it's difficult to explain because I do so many other things, but that's like the meat of what I do. And I've been with the W now since 2020. So this actually my going start of my 5th year with them, because I got here in January, middle of January, after 2 years with the NBA PD.
Congratulations, 5 year anniversary.
And it's like it changes and develops so much. I mean, literally, I just talked to a player who's in China for 30 minutes about something, and then I talked to another player who's in Turkey 15 minutes, like you, and then I just talked to a player in Unrivaled. And so it for me, it's who I needed when I was playing that I never had. I never found, they never had this job title, but also this person available in the league office that I could talk to. I mean, I literally played 14 years and never once, I mean, in my head, I thought about what I was going to do after, but I never once thought I would be coaching after. Like, that surprised me. I mean, I was great in the locker room and I was players coach. I was a coach's player, like that person, but it blew me away that I was good at coaching and that I was good at relationships. Um, and so I wish I had someone like me to talk to me about the next steps. And that's what I do. When it comes about time to start having them conversations, who better to have a conversation? You want to talk to your coach, your GM, you want to talk to a former player who's been there before in that same spot, contemplating retirement and what do I do next? Because I've only been this basketball player. And for many of our players, that's really all they've been. Like for me, I've worked normal jobs all my life because I've had to. So basketball wasn't my only thing that I did. And going to an NAIA school, I had jobs while I went to school because I had to pay for college. There were no scholarships in NAIA. So it was kind of like I have a huge resume because I have all these jobs, whereas some of our players have only been basketball players. However, there's so many great skill sets that come from being a basketball player that I help them focus on those in order to get them where they want to go. So yeah,
I'm so glad that you touched on being the role that you never had. I think
yes,
that speaks to this piece in particular very, very strongly. And I'm first of all, kudos to you. I mean, it's incredible that you have created this path for yourself and created a path for all these women coming behind you. I think that is so special, and that's something that means so much to me personally. I mean, the reason I do this job is so that there are no little me's growing up in the Boston area who don't know that the WNBA is a thing, who don't know that the Connecticut Sun is within driving distance. And it's my job to make sure that everyone in New England knows that we're here and we are good and we have women who are doing amazing things and who deserve to be seen. And there's
yes,
Black women doing this amazing stuff. And
yes.
so I really connect with what you're saying about that. And I think it's so powerful. And I I'm wondering, does it fill you with pride to see these women now with all these brand deals and all of the excitement and the just the atmosphere in this country now and honestly internationally about women's sports? Does it fill you with pride to see these women coming up with this opportunity and this recognition for all the hard work?
I mean, if I guess that's the best word we can say is pride. It
Yeah.
a sense of honestly contentment. You feel a sense of completion almost like, yes, all those days I missed birthdays and Christmases, you are helping to build something so that one day, even if it's not your child, someone's child has an opportunity to earn $4 million a year.
Absolutely.
Like that to me, we're talking about labor of love. Like the labor of love that you've put into your chosen sport as a Black woman, where you have to miss things and then you see the growth in your lifetime. It's like, yeah, you're like content. You're like you're filled with joy and happiness. You can't feel anything else. Like when I think about all of the ones that came before me that were never recognized, that will never be recognized for what they have done, that I am the piece, I am the recognition for those women to get me to where I'm not afraid to say my first year overseas, I made $12,000. $12,000. And there was no Skype. I had to pay $8,000 phone bill every month. So I was living on like $600, like literally living on $600 plus paying bills at home. Um, to now where you say, oh, you going over for 12,000 total. I played for 8 months for $12,000 to get my name out there. Whereas now you're like, what? My first WNBA contract was $32,000 and I was excited about that. Like you can't make up the amount of pride that you feel when you see an Angel Reese, a Caitlin Clark, this huge blockbuster deal, a Kelsey Plum on a commercial, a Rebecca Lobo, Jonquel Jones on those State Farm commercials, Juju Watkins, Flage, like all of those kids, Nevaeh Tot, whose mom I played against,
Mm,
Helen Darling Tot, in the league, watching her play on TV. You can't quantify the amount of contentment and happiness you feel because you were I feel like a proud grandmother. I mean, they're old enough to be my grandkids. I feel like a proud grandmother. Like I didn't have a hand in their success. I had a hand in building the vehicle that helped them to their success. And I think that's the difference. Some people want to say, oh, because of me, they're doing no, 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 no. I had nothing to do with their success. I had everything to do with the building the vehicle that helped them get their success. And that's the difference. And that labor of love is what I hold with me all the time is that every time I step into the office, every time I talk to a player, it's a labor of love because I'm trying to get them to a place that I knew I would never get. And that's the beauty in being a pioneer. Like, you're never going to see, I'm never going to see a million a year, maybe, working CEO and all of that. But as an athlete, as a player, I know I was never going to see a million a year. And I was okay with still giving the same effort and still building the same building and still playing the same way and giving it all and missing birthdays and Christmases and anniversaries because I knew at some point I was hopeful and prayerful that I would see someone get that within my lifetime. But even if I didn't, I knew that I was hoping to build this base that was moving towards what you see now. And I can't wait for the next and the next. And if I'm around the next, because that's really what it is when you love something the way I do, the way you do, the way many of our former and current players do, and people that work in our ecosystem do, is that you want the Dick's Sporting Goods, you want the State Farms, you want the Allies, you want all of these amazing people to see not only the beauty in the sport and the game, but also the potential in the players as people, as women, as impacts, as leaders, transformational and inspirational. And that's why you do it. And that's the amazing part about this game and my job and who I was as a player and who you are.
Josh, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to be skipping out of my office because I am just so energized by this conversation, and you are a light, truly. You really are. The way you've poured into the people around you, into this league, into the women who come behind you, everything is just so incredible what you're doing, and I really appreciate the time that you took with me today.
You're amazing. Don't let anybody tell you different. I am so incredibly grateful for you to reach out to me and to give me this opportunity. I don't get many opportunities to speak, not only about my love of Connecticut Sun, but my love of women and WNBA in particular, but also all women, because I think sports connects and we are always those connectors. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for letting me share.